Hello, everyone. This is Coresair Mack, President of the Illinois Mental Health Counselors Association. And today I'm joined by our very own special guest, owner of In Motion Counseling, Sandra Montes. How are you doing today?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Doing well, welcoming 2023.
Yep, 2023, you know me. Right?
It's here somehow.
Yep, somehow, some way, we made it. I bet it on aliens, but the aliens never came, so I lost that bet. But that's okay because 2023 is still new, still fresh. We still have a whole year to go.
Still possible, still a possibility here.
All right, perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into it. So, all your fans want to know, how did you become interested in counseling?
The story I always tell about how I became interested in social work is I went to an elementary school, and the school social worker there seemed so happy. He would stand at the doorway and high five all of us and greet everyone, and he just seems to have so much positive energy. And one day I just stopped and asked him, like, who are you? What do you do here? You seem so joyous versus our teachers that, looked a little tired. And he's like, well, I'm a school social worker. And I'm like, you know what? That's what I want to do. You seem happy. And I think I could do that. High five, kids. I got it. And so that's one of the reasons I became a social worker. He just inspired me by his energy.
All right, perfect. Great. I'm always happy to hear that other people inspiring other people helps them pick out their jobs. So that's perfect. So it sounds like you have a bunch of energy too, then, right?
You have to when you're a private practice owner and a school social worker. So
Mhm.
yeah, I try to get that energy going.
All right, perfect. Well, speaking of schools, what schools did you go to for your undergraduate and your graduate degrees?
Yeah, I went to Loyola University Chicago. I did both my undergrad and grad there. And both of my degrees are in social work. So I have a BSW and an MSW.
All right, very nice. Very nice. So
Yeah,
then,
once I knew what it was, I was like, this is it. This is the path. I'm just gonna stick on it.
right. All right. So when it comes to social work, I know that social workers, they do a lot, right? They're pretty much a jack of all trades. So then I know when it comes to specifically doing therapy or anything like that, how long have you been doing therapy for?
Yeah. Oh, that's like a trick question. If we say post licensure, I'm coming up to almost 20 years. And so I was very lucky in the sense that I was able to have experience at schools and also work in different outpatient settings. And so as an undergrad, I did some work at some local hospitals running IOPs, which is intensive outpatient programs for teens. And so that was probably one of my favorite jobs that I had. And that's where I gained a lot of my clinical experience, so that when I applied for my master's program, I knew that I specifically wanted to work with teens. And that's why I chose the school social work track. It just felt like all the stars aligned to do that type of work.
Oh, yeah, definitely, especially working with teens. So bless you for doing that.
Oh, I love them. They keep me young. They're just such a great space, age to be at. Love seeing the world through their eyes. They're so brave. Yeah, I think it definitely, there's a lot of energy there that goes with working with teenagers.
I 100% agree with that. So I know you mentioned, you work at a school and you own your own private practice, but I'm pretty sure it didn't start there. So what places did you work starting off in your profession, and what did you learn as a result from working at those places?
Yeah, well, I started off school social work fresh off with my MSW degree because I had my Pell, and so I worked in different area high schools. So that's been pretty consistent. But the outpatient work has really been a little bit of everything. I think most of us counselors and therapists work in a variety of settings, and so I worked in inpatient settings with teens. Like I said, I did IOP, I did some family counseling. I worked
Mhm.
at federally qualified health centers,
Oh,
at school-based health centers, and again, using the clinical lens, working with teens, just in a variety of different settings. I also really enjoyed the integrated model for behavioral health. I
mhm.
think working at a federally qualified health center was a great experience where you had to do those brief interventions that were very similar to school social work, where we might have 10-minute, 15-minute session with a student. And so seeing kind of a lot of parallels in the way in which I was delivering services just in different settings.
Right, which makes sense because especially in the schools, you get a short amount of time to help them. Then you got to send them right back to class or wherever it is they need to go.
Exactly. And the same model kind of applied in primary health, where a doctor visit is 15 minutes long. So whatever it is that the
Mhm.
doctor needs you to address, whatever behavioral health need needs to be quick and fast and engaging so that clients are open to it and are wanting to get a little bit more help.
Yeah, that is true. That is 100% true. All right, so you're working at these places, you're having fun, you're full of energy, you're helping out the kids and the teens. And then somewhere along there, you decided to start your own private practice. So what was that process that led you to wanting to start your own private practice?
Yeah. It was only supposed this only started, it was supposed to be a side hustle. This was supposed to be just me kind of doing my thing after school, seeing some more adult clients, seeing more diverse population. Um, and also in my own reflection of the types of bosses that I had. We've all had really great bosses, and we've all had some bosses that weren't so great. And
Yeah.
so really seeing other people do it as well, I'm like, well, I think if they could do it, I could do this too. And so 2018 is when I opened In Motion, um, not really with a solid plan, which I don't recommend anybody do. Please don't do it that way. But what happened is with COVID, once the pandemic came and we were shut down, the intense need for mental health services was just so high. And so I was inundated with referrals and people who were in need and suffering. And so for me during this time, it was a way to really give back and feel like I could do something, to help, because it was in the early days it was really unnerving and it
Mhm.
was really scary. And so I was seeing a lot of nurses, doctors, I was seeing a lot of just people, retail workers, you name it, who really were the front line, to the pandemic. And so this is when I started to pick up the phone and calling my colleagues that I had worked with and said, hey, listen, this is what's going on. I have a wait list of X amount of people. Do you want to see some of them? Do you want to help? And really everybody that I reached out to answered the call during, again, this worldwide global pandemic. And so that's kind of how In Motion really started. It was very organic. It was out of need. It wasn't anything that was planned. It wasn't a business move. It was just, there is this need and we need to fill it, and we need to be there for each other during these times.
Yeah.
And so now I have six therapists that work for me that show up every day still doing the work, because even though we're not in the height of the pandemic anymore, we're certainly not back to any type of normal. I think people are still adjusting, people are still grieving. And so we are still working on a lot of those issues of change and adjustment. And I'm just so blessed that my friends are like, yeah, let's do it, right? Let's jump on board. And it's such an again, I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I learned as I went along. And I surrounded myself with really smart, intelligent women, and I would be like, does this sound right? What do you think? Like, yeah, let's do that. It was very collaborative. It was never like, I'm the boss and this is what I think we should do. It was more like, we're kind of in this together. And to this day, I always ask, like, is there a better system? Is there a better way? How should we do this? I'm always welcoming to how to do things better, because we kind of threw this all together and went with it. We saw the need and we responded. So now sometimes we have to back up and say, okay, this isn't crisis mode anymore. Are the systems that we have good? Am I taking care of my, my therapist, my providers, our clients? And so again, just kind of knowing people, trusting that they were good clinicians. All the clinicians that work for me, I've worked with and I've worked alongside. So I knew that they were great clinicians. I didn't have to worry about if they were going to be able to respond to this need. And so I really do think that the early days of wanting to open the practice was really just because of the great need and responding to that.
All right, nice. So then here's a side question then. What would you say was your biggest hurdle when you were opening up your own practice?
There's a lot of it's a business, so there's a lot of legalities here, right? You have to register as an LLC, you have to come up with a name, you have to come up with like a bank account, you have to, if you wanted to take insurance, you have to get paneled. What does that look like? A lot of professional paperwork. And so, and things that take a lot of time when you get credentialed, or when you're applying for your MPI number, for example, when you're filling out the QA, there's lots of steps, but it's all just paperwork, right? So people always tell me like, oh, it must seem so hard. I'm like, it's not difficult. It's paperwork. It takes time. And so that's the piece. It's not hard. It's just time consuming. And you have to make sure that you're filling it out correctly, because it's like, oh no, this is wrong. Do it again. And you're like, oh no, that's 8 weeks. 8 weeks just went by and I have to do it again. And there's also like professionals who do this work, which I didn't use and I didn't know about. And I'm like, because again, it was just me. So I'm like, I could take my time with this. But then as we started to grow, we really had to figure out, okay, we need someone who does this for a living, because they could just knock it out. They know the questions, or we just figured it out because so many of us had done it that we could coach other people on how to do it. And so while it seems overwhelming, because it truly is just paperwork.
Yeah, that's true. It truly is just paperwork that you do not want to mess up. Right? I learned firsthand from that. That is true.
What mistakes did you make?
Oh, you don't want to know. But I would say one of the mistakes that I made was, so I didn't realize there were 2 MPIs.
Yes.
So I applied for the MPI 1, not realizing that I had to apply for the MPI 2 if I wanted people underneath me.
Yes.
And
or just to separate you from your business. Yes, there's all sorts of reasons to do that. And so if people aren't interested in doing their own practice, that's a big mistake that I also did, that I literally learned on Facebook. Someone posted something, or I was like, I made this mistake. And someone's like, yeah, because you need this. And I'm like, oh, okay. And again, that's just paperwork. We just submitted it and then we got it.
Yeah, that's true. But now we know, right? Right. So speaking of names, because I know you mentioned one of the things that you had to come up with is a name. So why did you choose the name In Motion Counseling?
Yeah, running has been a big part of my life. When I was in high school, I was on the track and cross country teams. And I continue to do 5Ks, 10Ks, and just really, really enjoyed running. And as I got older, really seeing running as a tool for healing, it just made you feel so good after going for a run, feeling so accomplished. And really, it wasn't until my training for my first Chicago Marathon in 2009, really seeing how transformative any type of movement can be, whether it's running, walking, dance, anything at all. And then when I became certified in EMDR, I was like, oh, of course, because there's science behind this, right? The bilateral movement, different parts of your brain are stimulated. And so it just wasn't like feeling good because you're done with the run, which of course it's still, runner's high is a thing. It's great. But really, truly, there's other science that backs this up. And so for me, really wanting to share this tool of movement with others, whether the movement is from the couch to the couch to your kitchen table, whether the movement is going to the end of the block and back, if the movement is vacuuming your house, right? It doesn't have to be a marathon, it doesn't have to be a triathlon. It could just be moving your bodies in a way that brings you joy, that gets you sweaty. It's just such a tool that's underused and that a lot of people have access to. And so when thinking about what to name my practice, I just felt that we had to talk about motion and movement and joy, which are really connected.
Yeah, definitely. So your name is In Motion Counseling and your logo is a pineapple. So is
It
there any
is a
significance behind that?
pineapple. Yes.
Yeah.
I just, first of all, again, when you don't, I didn't plan. I'm just like, it's so cute. I love pineapples. But really, pineapples symbolize welcoming. And so really wanting people to feel welcomed. I think it was also a nod to the fact that most of us are Latinx providers. And so having a little bit of that Latin flair in our title because it wasn't in our name.
Mhm.
And I love the saying about, pineapples wear their crown high, and it's just very empowering for women of like, yes, we all can wear crowns and we all can be sweet. So really seeing a pineapple is kind of a symbol for women empowerment.
All right, nice. You put a lot more thought into your logo than I did into mine.
what what did you think about yours? Were you
Well, now I don't want to say it because now it just sounds, but mine is a squiggly line with a fishing rod in the middle.
Oh, I love that. Uh-huh.
So basically, it's more of teach or give a man a fish, you feed it for a day, teach a man a fish, you feed him for life. And then the squiggly line around it just represents that it's not going to be a linear process. There are going to be highs and lows within it, but we just got to be as adaptable as possible to essentially fish for what we want and need.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. See, so with your logo, you did put some thought into it. And there's no way of knowing. Had you told me in 2018 that this is where I was going to be today, maybe I would have done something different, probably. Because again, before I was like, oh, this is me. This is what I like. And so sometimes we talk about that, like, should we rebrand or change our logo? And I'm like, we're in too deep. Like, let's just
Yeah.
stick with it. This is what it is. I love explaining the story and telling it. So we're full speed ahead with our pineapples.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like so the pineapple works. The pineapple works, right? All right. So as I was doing research on you, I was looking on your website and I found a couple of things that I wanted to ask you about.
Sure.
So first, what is walk and talk therapy?
It's as simple as it sounds. Instead of sitting in an office and a plush leather couch, we go out there and we walk. We take a walk. So clients meet us in our office. We go to the local park. We do a couple laps. We can stretch. We can sit because walking for an hour can be a lot for some people. But this isn't an aerobic walk. This isn't like a power walk by any means, shape, or form. This is just another vehicle or tool. If we're talking about really difficult things, it can be intimidating having someone across you just staring at you, hearing you say your deepest, darkest things. And so what I learned from running actually is that people will really talk about just about anything when they're moving, and those defenses come down. And then I feel like it's also a little bit more kind of train of thought, like when you're on a walk and someone sees something, it reminds them of something, and then that goes to something else, versus like we're talking about this topic that's really hard. And so it's just a different modality. It's a different way to help access those thoughts and feelings that might be hard to express if we're just sitting across from each other. And again, when you walk with someone, you walk side by side. So there's no like weird staring at each other. We're just we're just going for a walk. There's also the therapeutic part of being in nature, right? That you're out, you're getting fresh air. In the summertime, you get your vitamin D. In the winter, you don't. But we walk all year round. And so as long as our clients feel comfortable doing so, I will meet them and I'll walk with them. So we're in Chicago. We all own jackets. We all own hats, gloves. We all have enough winter gear to be able to walk. for 45 minutes to an hour without suffering too much. Again, if it's, you know, zero, like it was a couple of days ago, or negatives, like we won't do that, obviously. But generally speaking, if the weather is tolerable and decent and not going to impede us from talking and accessing what we want to access, then that's another way.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. All right, perfect. And I know you mentioned it's not exercise, but it's just movement.
Yes.
Yeah, just getting them in motion. So then that brings me to the next thing that I saw on your website, yoga. So do you guys do yoga with your clients there too?
No, we do a different type of yoga. So I'm trained in yoga nidra, which
Oh,
is sleep yoga.
oh.
It's a type of meditation, restorative practice that really helps relax people. It actually requires no movement. You just lay there, but it's a different type of yoga practice where you go through different parts of your body, different points, and consciously think about them and relax them. And so as with anxiety or just general stress, we carry that a lot in our physical bodies, right? There's a lot of aches and pains, you know, literally, you're pain in my neck, right? Pain in my back. And so with nidra, we really practice on relaxing that and also quieting the mind, because you feel like you're asleep, but you're kind of not, but you kind of are. And so a lot of people feel very refreshed after practicing. They feel like they took like a power nap. And so again, a different modality of accessing whatever pain, physical or emotional, our clients are going through. So it could be a walk, or it can be intentional awareness of our own body.
Hmm. Oh, interesting. I did not know that existed. So I learned something new today.
Yeah, it's really I think, again, it's very restful, it's very restorative. I think it works really well as an element of like DBT when we talk about mindfulness. You know, these are all techniques that we all kind of know as therapists. And now with the internet, most people like take deep breaths, relax, right? But how do we do that? Like, no one actually teaches us how to take the deep breaths. No one actually says like, here's how we relax the body. Everybody just says relax. Like, we know how to do that. Well, if we did, we wouldn't be so stressed out. And so nidra is just like another tool to help people kind of relax, I would say.
All right, perfect. All right. So then another thing that I found on your website, I found a lot on your website, by the way, but
Yeah.
another thing I found on your website are your blogs. Right.
Yeah.
So how do you find ideas for writing your blogs? Or what is your process for writing your blog?
We were a lot more, I was a lot more active in the blogs during last year, during 2020 and 2021. And so we took a little break from the blogging, hoping to come back this year. But a lot of the ideas from the blog really just come from the team. Like, what are we thinking about? What are we seeing in our clients? What's kind of the theme of things that are coming up? Trying to reflect that. We also write a lot about current world events, things that are impacting people now. Um, you know, I have a pretty big mouth and lots of opinions, and so for me, it's really fun to blog just about my own ideas and to see if there's other people out there who share in them or what other people think. Because certainly they're just like opinions, and so it's always just cool to connect with others, even when they're like, I don't really think that's true, or I don't know about that. It's just a way to connect with other people in a really like genuine and fun way.
Mhm.
So that's part of like the reason for blogging, really, is just kind of having an opportunity to have more conversations about all the things that impact us.
All right, definitely. Perfect. All right. So then speaking about that, well, we'll probably have to come back to that in a second. But as we're getting to the final questions, well, first things first, is there anything that you would like to tell people starting out in the field or who have been in the field for a while?
I think for those who are starting out in our field, I would encourage them to find a mentor, to find a supervisor, to find their support. It's a tough profession. and you're going to be in it the rest of your life. And so it's really important to find people who are going to support you clinically, emotionally, so that you have support. And in terms of those of us who have been in the field for a longer period of time, I would say that to continue with our self-care and to continue to do the things that fill us, because that's kind of what's going to keep us going. I think too, as we get more experience, to really trust in ourselves and trust in our gut and trust that we can do these hard things, like opening up our own practice or leaving our community mental health center job if that's not what fills us, and finding something. I think so many of us are afraid that we're not going to find another job, or that no one's going to pay me this, or there's a lot of excuses, a lot of scarcity mindset. Speaking for myself, growing up in a neighborhood that didn't have a lot of resources, with immigrant parents, an immigrant myself, really always doubting, like, is this it? Like, this is, can I do that? Oh, I can't do that. That's like for people who know how to do it, right? And so it wasn't until I was like, well, what do they have? We have the same degree, we have the same education. This is just a matter of, for me, learning, because like we were saying, I didn't know how to open up a practice. My parents weren't in any way, they couldn't help me or teach me. And so really it was Google, right? Facebook groups,
Yeah.
peers. And even with peers, there's a lot of gatekeeping, right? A lot of racism, jealousy, sexism. And so I think now it's changing, right? Because 2018, when I started, was different than it is now. And so I would say for all of us therapists and clinicians to always know your worth and your value, to not sell yourself short, that you've worked your butt off for this degree, and that you can and will do the things that are going to bring you joy. Why wouldn't you go for it?
Yeah, exactly. Do not sell yourself short. That's a huge theme that's a problem in our profession, because they're like, oh man, I just have this. I don't think I will get paid this, or I don't think I'll get this job. But yeah, don't sell yourself short. Very important.
I think too, something that helps with that is think of it, and that's too hard, right, to say, oh, I don't know about me, but also thinking about your peers, because when you sell yourself short, then you're also selling your peers short, because you're saying,
Yeah.
this is my value, and it's also your value. And so when we all collectively come together and say, no, this is our rate, or this is what we're worth, then that's really when we're going to be able to kind of change the profession, whether it's social work or counseling.
Right. So true. All right. So then the second to last question before we get to the most important question, right? So I know I've been asking you a lot of questions and things like that, and you've imparted a lot of knowledge and wisdom and information on me. So then, is there anything else that you would like to say that I haven't had a chance to ask you about?
I think that everything was covered. I really enjoyed getting to know you and chatting with you. I hope that people take away some inspiration. And of course, if they have questions, they can reach out to either one of us, since it seems like we both made the same mistakes. And so reminding others that, listen, you're gonna make them, you're gonna fix them,
Mhm.
and it's gonna be okay.
Right. Exactly. In the end, it's going to be okay. All right. So now for the most important question, drum roll a little bit, but where can people find you?
Yeah. So if, on our website is probably the best. That's inmotioncounseling.com. You can find me, you can find more about our practice. You can find the bios of all the wonderful staff that work at InMotion. You can find us on Instagram. That's in.motion.counseling. You can find us also on Facebook, which is In Motion Counseling. And so it won't shock anybody to know that I am the marketing on Facebook and Instagram. So you will see a lot of me there, but you'll also find out for our upcoming events, book clubs. We have a book that we read about one a month, one a quarter, depending on what the topics are. We host all sorts of fun running events as well throughout the city. And so if you're thinking about wanting to start running or walking, we can connect you with different run clubs in your area. So you can check it out, meet new people. So those are the other ways to find me. And then of course I'm on LinkedIn, and that's with Sandra Montes. And that one's a little bit quieter, but if you want the full experience, you definitely have to come on Instagram or Facebook.
Okay, so you heard it here, folks. For the full experience, Instagram or Facebook.
You'll see a lot of pictures of my dog there.
All right, perfect. I'm a dog lover, so can't wait to see your puppy.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Well, that's it for this interview. Again, thank you, Sandra, for coming and speaking with me. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This was so nice.
Yeah, no problem. We'll definitely have to do a part two because, like you mentioned, there are a lot of blogs out there that you wrote that I want to pick your brain on. And now that I learned about this new type of yoga, now I definitely got to know more about it. Because if I can avoid moving, I'm not flexible at all. So
Yes.
if I could do that, then that would be perfect. Then that's my type of yoga. That's the yoga I want to do.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody. This is Coresair Mack, president of the Illinois Mental Health Counselors Association, signing out, and I'll see you at the next interview. Take care.